Hey, welcome back to the Ideas to Save the World conference. We're here to blow it up and finish it off with the podcast godfather, André Goulet, who's been doing a lot of hustling behind the scenes to bring us all better content, keep us better informed, and help us be able to think more critically of what's going on in the world around us, specifically in the fake country of Canada. I am very excited to welcome André to present his idea to save the world, and we'll be jumping off right now.
Hey, Matthew, it's good to be here.
Hey, thank you, sir. So, what is your idea to save the world, sir?
Podcasting. I coordinate a lot of the podcasting community in so-called Canada, and this has been kind of a role I've been playing for a few years. So, Harbinger Media Network is a new initiative that we are launching at the end of the month, and so I'm here at the conference to kind of talk about this and tell people more about it, tell them what it's going to be about, who are the shows on it, and what this community is.
Nice. So I guess with that said, then, can you jump into the deep end and let us know what's the deal with Harbinger? Because I think a lot of us are super stoked when we saw it. Very mysterious at first. We have enemy of the show, Rob Rousseau, started talking about it. We saw you talking about it and a few others. It looks like this is going to be a really big thing. Can you get into the details?
Sure. How did Rob make your enemies list, by the way?
We have a few members that he likes to cyberbully. So
does he do that online? Does he have beef with those guys?
A little bit, yes, a little bit.
Oh, that's so surprising. Well, all I know from Rob is just that he's a extremely diligent and dynamic person with a lot of good ideas, and so I hope everybody works it out. But yeah, so Rob is part of this team of Harbinger Media Network. So we're a group of leftist podcast and content creators from around the country. We are joining forces to create a media network, and the goal is to challenge existing right-wing and corporate media dominance in French and English from coast to coast. So, Matthew, you might ask yourself, why do we need this? I mean, you might not ask yourself, but other people might, because they'd be like, "But we have podcasts. Like, why would we need this network?" Okay, do you know what percentage of podcasts downloaded in Canada are actually American content?
Oh, God. Let's say 10%.
No, I'm sorry. That's a really low guess. It's actually 75%. If you look at the top 100, like in news and politics, you will see show after show of American stuff. And so it's usually either, with the exception of Chapo Trap House and maybe like occasionally Struggle Session or some of these other big left shows, it's almost always sort of milquetoast beige centrism, like, the major networks, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, whatever. And then the far right, absolute trash fire of your Ben Shapiro's and stuff like that. And it's insane because, we having Canadian voices in our podcast, like availability is key for sharing our ideas. In fact, last week, the only Canadian show in the top 10 political podcast downloads was Peter Mansbridge's The Bridge. So it just kind of makes me want to build a bridge to a better Canadian media landscape, because why wouldn't there be anything more interesting than that? Okay, another question, another quiz question. What percent of Canadian podcast listeners do you think tune into at least one episode of the Joe Rogan Experience in any given month?
At least one episode?
Yeah.
Okay, my 10% was wrong before, so I don't want to go there again. Let's say 20%.
Oh, perfect. Right on the nose. That's exactly right.
Oh, wow.
And Rogan is Rogan is claims to be a left-wing guy, has platformed Bernie Sanders and some other good voices, but he also does that weird, both sidesism, where he will have on Milo Yabadabadooopoulos, or whatever that guy's name is, or Stephen Molyneux, the French Canadian racist and homophobe, or these weird, these just decrepit, degenerate ghouls, and then he'll have them on and platform them, Alex Jones and people like that. And so, 1 in 5 Canadians, this is one of their main one of the main parts of their podcast diet. Why is that? It's kind of not okay. And the reason that this happens is because podcasting never really evolved in terms of distribution into something that people can easily access. What is the, catalog? What is the menu? What's available out there? So there's like a million podcasts in the world, literally. And how are people supposed to find what is out there that would actually be sort of on side with their own values and ethics and stuff like that? And with this community of shows, everybody has kind of been out there doing their own thing for 2, 3, 4 years, but we want to reach more ears, right? We want to like reach more of an audience so we can get our ideas out there and really kind of push left thinking into the podcast discourse in Canada in a much bigger way. So basically, it's about like trying to get to people who just don't have access to what we're doing. And another reason for that is that media in Canada is remarkably Toronto based, and that means like everything goes through that filter. We're proudly like a coast to coast network, and I'll get into some of the shows later, but we're pretty proud of that. And we're featuring content in French and English, which I think is really cool to be able to kind of bridge those two solitudes. And then the other thing is, did you hear about Canada's public broadcaster, the CBC? Well, they're launching a new partnership called Tandem this year. Did you hear about that?
I did not know.
Okay, well, it's amazing.
Scared.
They're going to be finally, they're going to be partnering with corporations to create branded content on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. This obviously totally sucks ass, and it's like a way for them to kind of like leverage their brand identity and like make money for the CBC, which is honestly like underfunded and stuff like that. But it really sucks that this is like their big initiative for the year. So even though there are some very good CBC podcasts and a lot of really good content on CBC radio, stuff like CBC's Tandem just sort of highlights what's wrong with podcasting in Canada. We need a space for left voices, and that's what Harbinger Media is trying to do.
That's amazing. I guess like first kind of thing that just comes to mind is it sounds so exciting. How come it hasn't been done before?
When we think about independent podcasting in Canada, I think everyone would think of Canadaland. And when Jesse Brown launched that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe, Jesse's a centrist at best. He's kind of a libertarian. I think he's got some good values, but like he's not a leftist, right? So sometimes that show does have space for some left ideas, and people like Nora Loretto, who was on this conference yesterday, they sometimes have a voice. James Wilt, who was on this conference yesterday, has also guest hosted with Jesse. But I don't think that's a priority for what Canadaland does. In spite of the fact that they do really good work with like the Thunder Bay piece from Ryan McMahon, that series, and Archie Mann's recent Canadaland Commons series as well. Those have been really good, but it's not quite like left. And so I think that this just hasn't really been a priority for any of our left media, and maybe it's because our left media just doesn't really have the scope or the reach. And so one cool thing with this community, this Harbinger community, is that we kind of came together over the last few years and sort of just nurtured, these relationships to turn ourselves into a community of people who care about the work the other ones are doing. And part of what we're trying to do with this new initiative is create a space where collaboration can happen and cooperation and new interesting ideas, because everyone is just kind of on the same page in terms of our politics and our ideology. So that's one of the really exciting aspects of it. So like CBC and Canadaland, they do well because they just have this massive scope, right? And lots of connections. They're very well networked. And a single leftist show doesn't. So some of the bigger shows, Alberta Advantage, they are incredibly popular, like well listened to in Alberta and like around the country. But they should be heard by like 10 times more people, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we amplify the Alberta Advantage so that they're getting 25,000 listeners an episode? Like that's the sort of goal, so that the good work that people are doing can be heard by more people. My feeling is that when we are all sort of like rowing in the same direction, then all the boats are like above water. I'm mixing up the metaphor, but like the idea is basically we can collectively grow when we're working together, and we have something that, like I'm not sure that the CBC has, which is solidarity. Like we're trying to create something together that is amazing, and we're cooperating and moving forward without any like independent financial backing, right? Like we're just trying to make it happen from the support of listeners. So yeah, that's sort of like the general why of what we're doing. Any questions about that?
I guess I hear the name Alberta Advantage, which obviously excites me greatly. Can you get into who else might be joining you on this exciting journey?
Sure, absolutely. So let me get into the uh, the lineup, and I'm not going to share the images after all because I think it slows down the stream.
Mm.
So I'm just going to like read them out. So this is a coast to coast initiative, Matthew, as I mentioned, and so let me just sort of like break down who we have across the country and what these shows are about. So in British Columbia, we begin with Out of Left Field in Victoria, British Columbia, and these guys have been putting out their show for like 4 or 5 years on the Gulag Archipelago of Vancouver Island. And it's Ben, Anthony, and Mackenzie who team up to take on the world of socialist politics through a prism of camaraderie and alcohol every 2 weeks on Out of Left Field. They like to drink and have a good time. Also in BC, there is Chris Markovich's Left Behind, which is a remarkable weekly series of interviews where he articulates a vision of what a socialist society could look like in this age of right-wing populism that we're living through, with incredible guests from around the country, from the world of politics, activism, and social movements. Left Behind, great show. Alberta Advantage. Highly influential in its province and beyond, and Alberta Advantage broadcasts out of Calgary. It's a collective of like I think 18 Marxists who basically just like work together to create this really deep dive show of political commentary, history, analysis, recent news, all of it from a left wing perspective. Incredibly great show. Many of us have definitely heard that one before. In the same province, Progress Alberta does a similar task. This is the podcast from Progress Alberta. Progress Report is the podcast, and it's another news and analysis show with a sort of caustic look and a sort of caustic style of media criticism that takes on Alberta politics every 2 weeks with host Duncan Kinney and producer Jim Story. That's Progress Alberta. And also in Edmonton, Evan McDonald's Keynote Lefter is the brilliant weekly socialist podcast about film and culture. It's wonderful. It's funny. They talk about TV, movies, throwbacks, new releases, and everything in between. Fantastic show. Moving east. We in Ontario, we have a few shows. Big Shiny Takes is the world's only anti-free speech podcast, and it's hosted by Eric Wickham, Jeremy Appel, and Marino. I forget Marino's last name. Sorry, Marino. They love to punish the pundits of Canadian media and dismantle the sorry state of our media culture in a bi-weekly conference call between Jeremy in Medicine Hat and Eric and Marino in the GTA. Great show, very funny. And also in Ontario, Oats for Breakfast, which is a eco-socialist podcast that approaches questions relevant to the sort of strategy of socialism in an open and non-dogmatic dialogue with hosts Umair and Sadia and a rotating panel of guests and comrades. Also in Ontario, I was super thrilled. We're having a new series launch with us from Nashwa Khan, who is the co-host of Muslim Rumspringa. She's launching a new show with us called Habibti Please, and it's an interview show where she speaks with politicians, thinkers, and others from around North America and looking at social issues from a left perspective. That's Habibti Please. I'm really looking forward to having that on the network. And moving into Quebec, then we have Rob Rousseau of his 49th Parahell. 49th Parahell, the long-running and influential show from Twitter's Rob Rousseau, explores the hellish nightmare world of modern reality with listeners every 2 weeks out of Montreal. It's a great show, and heard like all over North America. It's definitely a crossover show, and has a big Canadian and American audience. Then also in Quebec, we have several French shows. Les Ficelles is really interesting. This show is enormous in Quebec and has like, I don't know, 10,000 listeners an episode. And the three hosts are these women who do a critical analysis of Quebec's most popular reality television program. It's called Occupation Double, and it's basically like Big Brother or something. Like couples go hang out in it's like trash TV, okay? And they do a feminist critique of it every week. And it's become just like enormously popular in Quebec. It's been covered in all of the French media. So it's really interesting to see Amélie, Robin, and Solène be able to do this sort of crossover show from the left that has become so influential in Quebec media culture. Les Ficelles, great show. And also Le Plancher des Vaches. I am the producer for this. This and Les Ficelles are collaborations with Ricochet Media, français in Quebec. And with Le Plancher des Vaches, host Ludwig Moquin-Baudry presents a weekly roundtable conversation where he and guests talk about, well, in the third season, which launches next week, they'll be talking about the American election. And it's going to be really interesting because they will be having French humorists on to explain what is the Electoral College to Quebec and French language listeners. So I'm really proud of the show. It's awesome. Ludwig is a great host. It's just like a really deadpan, deeply researched and really interesting show. So French listeners might enjoy that. And the two more. This is all the shows that are putting out content right now. Two more shows. Hillary Agro's Bread and Poppies is a podcast about drug policy from a left perspective. And so she gets into conversations with academics, researchers, activists, people from those communities to talk about drug policy in North America through the lens of left thinking and socialism. It's a great show. And the final show putting out new content with us is like show 15 or something, is Paris Marx in Newfoundland with Tech Won't Save Us. Paris is a radical urbanist. He contributes routinely to Jacobin. And this show is basically like a critical perspective on tech and how the worldview of tech, the Silicon Valley nerds who are destroying society, sort of this pulling back from that world and sort of critiquing it with the goal of inspiring us to demand better from our tech overlords and to demand a better world. So those are all the new shows. And then we are really proud to be hosting some archives of some kind of old favorites that are now on hiatus or just sort of like done for now or whatever. And of those shows, I'm really, I'm a super fan of News You Can Use, which is the sort of cross-Canada, pan-Canadian show where James Wilt, Tanera Yelland, Marge in Edmonton, and Drew Brown in Newfoundland, James in Winnipeg, and Tanera in Toronto would have a really interesting cross-Canada conversation on just like the events of the week and just like a completely brutal left takedown of everything that was going on. I loved that show. I also produced it. And I wish they'd come back, but maybe someday. So that's News You Can Use. We also have Charlie Demers' Well Reds, which is a left book review podcast out of Vancouver, where Charlie would have on a guest where they would both discuss a left book they had recently read. Fantastic show. That's also on hiatus. I'd love to have Charlie back to do like a special one-off episode, though. That could be in the works. We'll see. Radio Free Winnipeg out of Winnipeg from Scott and Greg Gallinger and Scott Price, a sort of just a critical examination of left issues, and often through a sort of historian's prism, sort of looking at issues in Winnipeg and Manitoba and in Canada through a critical perspective, for sure. And then finally, Fil Rouge is another show that is from Ricochet French. This was a show that came out a couple years ago, where the series the hosts went into sort of North Quebec and integrated with Inuit communities and Indigenous communities sort of far out of the metropolitan Montreal area, and sort of talked to them about their stories and their experiences. And it was a really fantastic show. It actually won the Paris Podcast Award for Best Francophone Podcast in 2018, which was really amazing. So I'm really proud to have that as part of our community as well. So that is what's going to be on the slate. Like, that's the roster. That's what we're dealing with. This enormous family of shows, like literally, from the left to the right of the country. And I'm really just incredibly proud of all the work that people do, because it's definitely very good content and very high quality. And it's just like remarkable to watch everyone doing their thing. Oh, shoot, I forgot Big Rings, which is Tanera again, Rob Rousseau again, and Hugh from Dog Island, Hugh Stewart. Big Rings is a basketball and sports critique from a socialist perspective. So that's also going to be joining us. And and Unpacking the News, which I hosted forever for 4 years. That's also, the archives will also be hosted at Harbinger Media Network. So that's the community. That's who's collaborating together, cooperating together, working together to create this space that is essentially going to be challenging sort of the political norms of Canadian media, and trying to sort of change the conversation and what's permissible to talk about, right? We're also going to be working to empower like a new generation of leftist media creators, because that's key. Finding space for new shows, new voices, and to that end, we will expand in a phase 2 sometime early in 2021 with some new shows coming on. We're also planning to aggressively expand into video. And to that end, we have some collaborative notions set up with some pretty big names, pretty interesting names. I can't say too much yet, but that's going to be one of the priorities in 2021, in a sort of phase 2, where we expand into video, bring on new Canadian shows, and ultimately in a phase 3, expand into some American content. And so I've been sort of planning to and making some connections and making some networking to get in touch with the Gravel Institutes, to get in touch with the Young Turks, and to sort of like build these connections with this broader left presence in North American media. So another reason that it's amazing to have these 20 odd shows, 40 creators across the country, all being part of this sort of unified team and unified perspective, is that we have more weight and we have more power, and we can seriously reach out to like-minded organizations around the country and around North America, and really create more of a community and opportunities to collaborate, ultimately to bring our perspectives and our values and our left ethics into the mainstream more and more. So it's super exciting. Right now we're just at the sort of beginning point, but it is going to be exciting to watch it expand. But Matthew, there's something important that we haven't touched on yet. How important are friends? How important is friendship?
Based on the conversations we've had today, maybe the most important thing, and maybe the only thing that can truly inspire revolution. Why do you ask, sir?
Well, I mean, imagine you had a really strong friend, a really good friend, and a really smart friend. Would you value that friendship?
Hypothetically, yes.
Where I'm going with this is that we're super excited that the online leftist journal Passage is actually on board as our founding partner. And so having this sort of friendship with Passage is incredible. If people don't know what is Passage, it's an online journal that offers left-wing perspectives on politics and economics and culture from Canadian writers and Canadian thinkers. So, it's thoughtful arguments, progressive ideas. It's available at readpassage.com if people haven't seen it before. At Harbinger, we're going to be doing just like pretty deep collab, including on the new show that I will be launching later this month, where I'll be hosting contributors to Passage and members of the podcast community in a roundtable conversation weekly, sort of talking about the issues and what's been going on. So it's going to be really cool to kind of integrate with Passage and amplify this sort of broader left voice, right? So yeah, friendship is important, and the friendship that we have with Passage, the sort of founding relationship that we have with them that's going to help us build a broader left media ecosystem. Super exciting.
Mm. Yeah, I got a little excited when you said unpacking the news, and then you said, "Oh wait, no, this is archive." So to hear your silky smooth voice back on the airwaves will be very much appreciated in a year where we need it.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, like Unpacking the News was a really cool show to do for, 4 years, 135 episodes, and 50 months. I did the math when I was wrapping up the last episode, and I was like, oh yeah, it's been 50 months. That's a long time. And what I'm looking forward to doing with the new show is sort of leaning into maybe more of the fun stuff. I really enjoyed doing like kind of creative, scripted. I don't want to say comedy because like I don't know if people actually found it funny, but like stuff that made me laugh, like just like stupid, like scripted sketches and scenes, and doing more of that while also being able to host a roundtable where we talk about issues and occasionally having experts on to examine like something crucial that's also going to be on the table. So this as yet untitled show is going to be my sort of exciting project that I'll be getting into later this month. And actually that's super thrilling because I love creating content. More on that in a minute. Matthew, let me ask you another question. How important is supervision? How important is it for, like not we don't want to be like monitored, but to have sort of helpful suggestions and sort of professional management? How important is that?
That sounds like one of the top 5 most important things I've heard of today.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Well, so my role sort of shifted from being like essentially like a rah-rah facilitator who just tried to like, build bridges and like make connections and whatever with like the podcast community to because we're a registered nonprofit, Harbinger Media Network is a registered nonprofit. Once I registered that with the government, suddenly I was an executive director. So it's kind of weird to like take on that title, but that's the role I'm going to be playing. And I am taking seriously like this as a sort of professionalization of the work that we've all been doing. So to that end, one of the things that was really important as we've been moving towards our launch, which will be at the end of October, is we need to bring on a board of directors, right? Mm-hmm. So I started reaching out to a few people that I thought would be a really good fit. And the people I reached out to are 3 like just super rad candidates. Roberta Lexier is a educator at Mount Royal University in Calgary. She's a historian on left social movements, occasional contributor to the Alberta Advantage. She's great. She's on the board. Jessica Green is part of the faculty at the University of Toronto's Political Science Department. She has a background in sort of like transnational regulation, regime complexity, organizational ecology, other things that I don't know what they mean. But having like I don't know, a couple of doctors on board with the project who are enthusiastic about building left media in Canada was definitely really cool. So Dr. Green and Dr. Lexier, super excited to have them both on. And the third member of our board at the moment, although we will expand in the future, is Kai Nagata, who I just respect so much. He's the Energy and Democracy Director at Dogwood, which is a environmental advocacy organization, I think based in Victoria. And Kai is a really interesting guy because he is a 4th-generation British Columbian, but he also is an ex-TV journalist who worked at CTV and CBC in Montreal. So he's got a real broad experience with how to approach like left community building, but in a professional capacity. And so he's great, and it was so wonderful to have him agree to come on. So we have Kai, we have Dr. Lexier, we have Dr. Green, and that's amazing. And that's going to expand in the future. And having a board of directors on board is something that was really important to me because it means that there's oversight and there's a professionalization to the work that we're going to be doing, which is going to add it legitimacy, right? Mm-hmm. So in my capacity as executive director of Harbinger, every few months I'm going to meet with these guys to just sort of talk about where things are at, where we're going, and basically create another layer of support and oversight to ensure that the organization thrives, because it's really important to me that this project succeeds. And yeah, I feel like it's crucial to have this in place so that left media can compete with establishment media on a sort of, coming from the same professional direction. And that's how we bring our ideas and our values deeper into mainstream Canadian society. So board of directors, definitely happy to have that on track. I feel like, though, I should get to maybe some details about how people can help. Matthew, if you thought, let's say you thought this was a good idea, would you want to dig in your pocket, jangle around a few coins, and see if you had maybe a toonie and a loonie to throw away?
I think I'd fish deeper and look for the bills.
Would you really? Well, okay, man, that's super cool. But let's say you're on a bit of a budget. Look, for the price of a cup of coffee, people can become supporters of Harbinger at harbingermedianetwork.com. They can help us move towards creating a more unified and influential left media space for just $3 a month, which gets the supporter access to our subscriber-only network shows. So that's going to include the weekly show that I'm going to be doing, hosting members of the podcast community and left media voices and Passage contributors in a weekly roundtable. But that's not all. Matthew, do you have any idea what I'm about to say next? Do you have any clue?
I honestly don't, and I'm really excited. I wish you'd stop asking questions. I want to know.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I'm jumping up and down right now.
Well, so Abdul is a film. Abdul Malik is a filmmaker and a union organizer in Edmonton, and was co-hosting Kino Lefter for a couple years. He's really excited about Harbinger, and he's been on board since we started to talk about it a few months ago. So when he told me that he wanted to release a exclusive show for the network, I was super thrilled. He and his collaborator, which is Ethan from the Drum Circle Jerk podcast in Toronto, they are going to be putting together a show for release in early January. It's off court, and it asks questions like, how is cricket decolonial praxis? Why did Amare Stoudemire become a Zionist? Was the miracle on ice in the 1980 Olympics a turning point in the Cold War? They're going to be asking all this and more with analysis, riffs, and deeply researched history, examining sports and how they inform the politics of our everyday lives. So Abdul and Ethan are putting out 10-episode seasons, and Harbinger supporters are going to get first exclusive access to that for, the first 3, 4, 5 months. Those are out. When a new season comes out, those episodes will go to be available for everybody. It's not current affairs. It's sort of deeply researched analysis. But supporters are going to have access to this show that is going to be very, very good. And I'm just super excited about that. So watch for Off Court Pod in early 2021. That's at the $3 level. If people want to throw in a couple dollars more, amazing. For $5 a month, you get access to the to the shows, to the exclusive shows. You also get access to the Harbinger listener-only community on a Discord server, and a bi-monthly question and answer with network contributors. We'll be inviting people to a Zoom call. And at $10 a month, you get all this plus some merch. And at $15, you get all of that plus a tote bag, which is going to be incredible. I'm really proud of our graphic design. And back to Passage for a second. And this is honestly nearly criminal. I feel I probably shouldn't be saying it publicly. Passage is donating 50% of every new membership to their Left online journal purchased before the middle of October to Harbinger to help us kind of get started, get off the ground, pay for the fees and expenses that we've had in the first couple months of organizing this initiative. And they're going to be adding a 1-year network membership to Harbinger, including all of that exclusive content for free. So if people want to support Passage and support Harbinger, go to readpassage.com to find out more about how to take advantage of that incredible, incredible deal. I hate to give the hard sell, but it is pretty exciting. Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I think that's amazing. I think as an existing subscriber to Passage, I feel like they stole your money. I'm going to write them and complain. This is unfair.
They're such good people. I really
Yeah.
respect them. And Davide Mastracci has done such an amazing job, really putting his mark on that. Just like the editorial perspective of Passage. So
Mm.
I think it's incredible. I'm so proud to be associated with them. So yeah, if people want to find out, if they want to find out more about that deal, go to readpassage.com. If they want to find out more about the network, including everything I've talked about, our launch lineup of shows and everything else, go to harbingermedianetwork.com. You can also find out how to become a supporter there. And for updates on our new projects and everything else, people can go to they can find us on Twitter at Harbinger Tweets. They can find us on Instagram at Media Harbinger, and the same on the Great Satan Facebook. Our crowdfunder is running through to the end of October, at which point we're going to launch the actual website. Find out more at harbingermedianetwork.com.
That's amazing. I I think so many of us are so excited for this, and I think just like organically, like we're not specifically trying to to pitch Harbinger, but we've had so many guests just organically say, "I'm really excited for Harbinger." So
Oh,
it's a super cool time. I think once
awesome.
we heard rumors of Goulet teaming up with Passage, that alone was getting a lot of people excited. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, but I gotta stress, like, I just kind of make phone calls and talk to people and try to like create bridges and bring people together and create community. What is, the reason this works is because everybody does just such a good show. Like, it's just like, it's just good. It's like deeply good, and I feel really grateful that these are the people who just sort of independently, through their own sort of interest and ambition and everything else, decided to do these shows that they have managed to create and make, you know, incredibly high quality. So it's wonderful working with them, and I love it.
awesome. And if this is a question you're not comfortable answering or whatever, feel free just to pass. No worries whatsoever. I'm wondering, as I know, enemy of the show, Rob Rousseau, will be with the podcast network. Um, Now that I'm paying for Harbinger, can I unsubscribe from his Patreon? Will he be getting funds that way, or how does that work? Can you
Oh
speak about
man,
the
okay.
revenue share?
Thank you so much for mentioning that, because this is actually super key. Like, so Harbinger is it's separate. Please don't stop your Patreon support for the shows that you love, because they do depend on, your dollar to kind of support the work they do. What we're doing with Harbinger is trying to create a framework where we are amplifying everything, right? And where we're making this whole community stronger. So it's not just like, we don't want things to stay the same listener numbers, same size of audience. We want to take what we are all doing and then make it stronger and bigger and better, thus expanding the audiences, hopefully expanding the Patreons and like the funding of all the shows. We're going to be really like, it's small scale. Our goal for fundraising is $3,000 a month, right?
Mm.
So this is not profit sharing. We're definitely not at the point where any of that's going to be happening. So please continue to support the shows you love. And if you can afford an extra $3 or $5 a month, support Harbinger as we move forward with trying to create a space where we can do things like, incubate new shows and bring on new voices to like get into podcasting, while also just creating this like broader community. And through that, really creating a space where people are like, oh, Harbinger Media, that's where the podcasts are. I
Mhm.
like it because I like many shows on that network. That's what we're trying to do, right? So please continue to support the shows you love. And if you can, we really appreciate if you can support Harbinger as well. But to be really clear, please don't stop supporting Rob Rousseau's 49th Pair of Hell.
Well said.
Matthew, continue to support that show. Continue to support it. Yeah.
It's always a good idea to listen to Goulet, so I have no choice now.
Okay.
Beautiful. So, for questions from the chat, we just had a question here. Are you connecting with Novera Media in the UK as well? I'm not familiar with them, so.
So Novera Media is when they started creating content like 5, 6 years ago, they were like a real big driver in the sort of Corbynista, like Jeremy Corbyn era of the Labour Party, and they really brought in like tens of thousands of people under 30 into the political process in the United Kingdom. And so Novara is awesome. I really respect their work. That's exactly the sort of international connections that we are going to be angling to create. So by creating this, force of Harbinger, which then can be recognized as like the unified Canadian left podcasting community and a media community beyond podcasting and moving into video and stuff. Yeah, I would love to connect with Novara. So I kind of feel like the first step, well, simultaneously with reaching out into the United States in the near future, yes, reaching out to Novara or the Canary, which is also a United Kingdom left website, reaching out to organizations like that is going to be on our radar for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. One of the things too is I think this really is the only united Canadian left anywhere in the country on maybe any subjects. So it happens to be media, which is phenomenal. But I'm just wondering for you and like the various like networkings that you've done, is there anywhere that you look and you see a movement of the left outside of the work that you were propelling?
Good question. So I mean that's such a complicated thing because yeah, there's so many people who are doing just like the same sort of amazing work, and maybe people are just too busy to like create relationships. I don't know. Maybe it's factionalism. I honestly don't know. I'm not someone who kind of looks at things in that context. So yeah, I don't really have an answer for that, but I feel like one of the objectives with Harbinger is to be working towards creating a space where we can act as a magnet to, bring in the voices of other established like media orgs, right? So like Aiden at the Canada Files does incredible work. It would be really cool to be collaborating with them. I love Briar Patch. I think what Spring Magazine is doing is excellent. Things like this, and yeah, creating like this space where we can kind of see maybe more of a unified media left. I do think that's really important. So in a broader sort of project, I would say that's part of my dream, is to have more unity. And I honestly don't know like what the path is to that, except to just sort of like be nice and be kind and sort of reach out and try to collaborate, right? Try to make things together. And that's definitely like the way to amplify the left message. So it's one of the things that feels really cool with the Harbinger community is that we can have these 15 or 20 shows around the country where people are pretty chummy, right? Like they feel okay, comfortable, happy, communicating with each other over the Slack channel. And that's a really nice thing to be able to sort of observe and participate in. So yeah, building a broader left, it's a priority, and it's, there's some urgency to it.
And this is just pure speculation. Is there a reason or anything that you might point to why there isn't just a Slack channel for the broader left in general, not just for the media network? Is that a thing
Oh,
that you think might come to fruition, or?
interesting. I never really thought about that, but that'd be a great way to communicate, right? Like, yeah, just kind of chaotic, but definitely a good way for people to share ideas and stuff. Reddit with your community, you guys could sort of launch something like that.
No, that's awesome. That's a good idea.
Hmm.
We do have a question here. Is Harbinger planning to facilitate podcast crossover episodes? For example, the 49th Parahel Advantage for breakfast, etc.
I love that idea so much. I mean, that's like that's kind of the dream. Okay, so like, okay, I'll just say this. Someone I won't identify from a podcast I won't identify, one of the hosts, uh, DM'd me and was like, "Hey, would it be interesting to do like like readings of left theater as a podcast?" I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, that would be so cool." And so then I like was having these sort of dreams of like doing radio plays and sort of getting like a cast of different contributors. So yes, absolutely. There's this sort of notion, and if you'll allow me to be an absolutely huge geek for a second, of a shared universe, which like this is so stupid, but I mean the reason the Marvel movies succeed is because everyone likes seeing Doctor Strange like on the Avengers movie, which is dumb, but okay. And so yes, like if there are crossovers between the shows, it creates this like cohesion and sort of excitement. And I mean, shared universe is just the best term I can think of to describe it. But I love that. And one of the things with having this community and having this like increased method of communication and stuff is that those things become possible. And so absolutely, yeah, I'm super excited about literally like that example that the question asker asked. I would love to see that. And yes, things like that will definitely be happening. It's super exciting.
Awesome. One of the questions, and you kind of mentioned it, touched on it earlier when you mentioned your Slack, but is there a place for consistent messaging or shared goals across your creators?
Yes. And so that's kind of the space, like having a communication space where everyone gets to like opt in, right? Like this is a super organic and super horizontal network. So that means I'm not someone who's like in my office chewing on a cigar with my feet on the desk when I when I shout to Rob to come in. Like, okay, no, like this doesn't no. It's horizontal in the sense that everyone is continuing to do their own thing, including, you know, running their own Patreons and creating their own content and sort of, you know, there is no editorial line because everyone kind of shares similar values. But then the role that, you know, I play and the role that the Slack community building that plays is just increasing the capacity for people to know what the others are doing and to create spaces where collaboration and cooperation can occur. And yeah, so having a space like that Slack channel, honestly, is just sort of a really key ingredient. And what it becomes, I don't know, right? Because everyone opts in to participate as much or as little as they want. But I feel like this is just, you know, a perfect time for relationships to really grow and for new cool things to happen.
Awesome. And then it looks like on the reverse side, we have a question here. It looks like there
Mhm.
will be a Harbinger discuss for or Discord for supporters. Is that something he gives some like idea around what that community building looks like?
Mhm. I mean, for me, the idea is to with this network, make the Discord like to be completely honest, we need to get to the point where we launch before I can really formulate what the Discord is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think much like how, you know, Alberta Advantage or 49th Parahel have a Discord, it's going to be people who are, you know, super into the whole vibe, right? And they can just come hang out and have conversations with each other and with people from the podcast community to sort of like just discuss things and hang out. And I really love how Alberta Advantage does, like, you know, film screenings. Kino does the same thing, right? Like Kino Lefter has been doing a Discord forever, and it's this really like warm, fun community where people have a good time. So I'm going to be looking at what has succeeded with those sorts of Discords to figure out, you know, how we can have an equally fun and interesting and engaging Discord for Harbinger. So along those lines, right? Like sort of a clubhouse and a place for people to hang out and just sort of like just yeah, get to learn things from each other, hopefully.
And you mentioned a little bit about like the leftist networks that you're connecting with. I wonder if you're comfortable sharing a little bit about maybe what you've learned from maybe the alt right. We see PragerU out there. We see some other organizations. We've heard some people talk about Facebook is overridden by the right now. We need to figure it out. Can you talk a little bit about what the other side is doing and what you've learned, and maybe you might counter it with?
Okay, so this is one of the things that Rousseau gets so excited about, which I love. So he was pointing out that like PragerU, super huge, and the Gravel Institute recently launched their own sort of answer to that, right?
Mm.
And their answer to it is basically like, okay, well, what PragerU does well is like they put together content and they make it seem sort of unoffensive, and then they put it out there, and it's just full of like complete misconceptions, lies, and like messed up things. We do the same thing, but we be honest and we put forward like good ideas and we explain why those work, and we create a space where left ideas get popular, right? Like that is part of the battle of ideas. And weirdly, it's like political organizing is so important, and so people who do work for tenants advocacy rights or like I mean a million different things, all that stuff is so important. But there is this whole battle of ideas that happens online exclusively, right? And there has to be an answer for the extremely well-funded, like Ben Shapiro shared universe of like the what Daily Wire bullshit. Like it's it's bad. It's really bad because they uh, are slick. And I think also like in a world where Fox News normalized the sort of propaganda aspect of what news is, and now that's just sort of like standard, right? Which is why we live in hell. This like we need an answer on the left, and we need to have it be fun. It needs to be aggressive. It needs to probably shitpost sometimes. It needs to attack like the people who suck really badly, as an answer to how the right manipulates just like everything. And I mean, that's the sort of goal with like uniting, certain left voices with the podcast community and collaborating with Passage, is to begin to create like this sort of strength there. So yeah, what does the right do well? I just think they have like massive funding and they know how to make it slick and they're really focused and they're really motivated. But we can be too. And that's, I think, going to be one of the missions of the Canadian and the American and the left everywhere in the coming years is how do we put forward our message to aggressively combat just the sick garbage that comes from these complete these ghouls, these scumbags, these dipshits, right? So that's part of the process, and that's one of the things that's really exciting is a challenge like that.
Yeah, wow. I One of the things that we also kind of talked a lot about was like coalition building, and I
Mhm.
wonder, like, has there been conversations with unions, with other organizations that are traditionally considered the left, to maybe help amplify and they might support your vision?
Such a good idea, right? Like, yeah, I mean, sort of being able to connect, creating a space where like connections happen, is key. One thing that's been really exciting is during this campaign for a new green leader is watching how the Justice Greens helped to create a space where the idea of having three eco-socialist candidates was like exciting and good and like sort of creating a lot of hype and excitement online. And so, yeah, building relationships with the more organizational left, I think, is part of the process. So obviously, like there's many different pieces that need to work together, and so being open to that sort of thing is, I think, really special, like really important. But really quickly though, on the like, people are kind of bummed today because our eco-socialist candidates didn't succeed. But I wanted to point out something. I was just after getting the results last night at 8 p.m. I was sort of like, oh, well, that's really too bad. But Dimitri came 2,000 votes short. It was super close, super close. 2,000 votes was all that separated, one of the five major political parties, federal parties in Canada, from having, genuine eco-socialist leftist leader. Super close. And, 14 years ago, when Elizabeth May first won the leadership, there was like 4,000 people who voted in that leadership election. So it's incredible that 10,000 people became coordinated and worked together and really pushed candidates like Miriam, and like Anita and like Dimitri forward. So I just thought it was really exciting. Obviously, it wasn't the the sort of victory that people were looking for, but coming 2,000 votes short is really great. And so I feel like that's like a really special thing too. Anyways, did that answer the question about the unions?
It did, yeah. No, everything takes a process, and I think that's one of the things too. Just quickly touching on it, just the affiliation with Justice Greens to disclose. I think one of the things that we take from it is there is so much more work to do beyond electoral politics, and I think we've heard Alberta Advantage talk about just talk to your neighbors, normal quest. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is such an integral thing, and we're talking about building a media network. We're talking about being critical of the media you do consume. I think that Harbinger is such an exciting vision for what we can bring, and not just for the current state of Harbinger and the goals that you've discussed, but all the conversations that are going to bubble up because of this show and because of the connections that have been raised. It's a really exciting time. I think we've even had some people like on the Justice Screen say that like they were in a dark place. They weren't like, maybe they were alt right, who knows? But they've heard a show and that show has helped them go forward and be a better person and feel more empowered in their life. It's like, how exciting is that?
Amazing. Yeah, totally. I mean, totally. And well, like, absolutely. The life we live online and the relationships that we build online are really important. But yes, we really should be involved with as many things as we can. And not everyone can carry a placard or like go organize face to face, but there are other ways to go connect with people, and that's definitely important. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that strategy for sure.
Awesome. So we are in our final 4 minutes here. I will hand it to you if you'd like for the final 4 minutes of why people should sign to HarbingerMediaNetwork.com and how that might end up saving the world.
I mean, let me get back for a second to the idea of how we have a dysfunctional podcast system, which basically means that it's not possible to find shows. Like it's hard, it's frustrating. People won't find the shows unless it's through word of mouth or through the sort of like online communities on Reddit or on Twitter or whatever. So what we're doing with Harbinger is we're building a unified voice and trying to amplify each other through having like this kind of solidarity based system where we're going to be collaborating and creating a space and a shared universe, which is whatever corny, but it's true, of just like making content and creating a media space together so that we can challenge the 75% of podcasts that are filling up, cluttering, if I may, the top 100 podcasts downloaded in Canada in any given week. So that's really the goal. It's to create this space where that can happen. And that's why partnering with Passage is so important, and making connections with other media in Canada, other left media, is going to be part of the mission moving forward. And and so I'll just remind anybody watching to please, if you do think this sounds like something you're interested in, go to harbingermedianetwork.com to find out more and to kind of read more about what I've been talking about over this hour with Matthew. And if you can afford a few dollars a month, that's wonderful. But we also just really appreciate people supporting the whole idea. And to find out the 15 shows that are on the roster at launch, you can also find that out at harbingermedianetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at Harbinger Tweets and on Instagram and Facebook at Media Harbinger. And Matthew, this has been like a super fun and like it's been really like interesting to have to reflect and think about the stuff and talk about it out loud. So I hope it's been useful and helpful for viewers. Is there any other questions before we wrap up?
We don't have any more on the stream. I just want to quickly ask, how did you get to the space where you're at? Because, good Lord, we can talk about the voice of the intonation, how you conduct and carry yourself. That's one thing. But to get to like the mental and emotional state to be so at peace with everything while the world is on fire, how do you do it?
Can I be totally honest with you?
Please.
I make rent. I make rent and like manage to like keep a roof over my head by teaching on the side. So I teach kids on Zoom. It's not like in a professional, or it's not in like a public school. It's a language teaching. So for about 8 hours a week, I need to meet 11 8-year-olds face to face. And kids that age, I can't be like, oh my God, everything's on fire. This is insane. I am miserable. No, I have to be very upbeat, and you can't really end the class on a bad note. You got to like be positive. So that really anchors me actually in just sort of, not optimism, don't get me wrong, but in a kind of like pacing myself and just like trying to be chill. Also, kids are cute and fun. So it's just like, it's kind of a good time. But honestly, that's the secret. Like, I don't know how miserable I would be if I didn't teach kids 8 hours a week. So yeah, that's my secret. Go learn how to teach and go get a job teaching and teach kids.
The final step of Normal Quest. Beautiful. I love it. Andre, that is everything for us. Thank you so very much for your time, sir. It is always a pleasure.
Matthew, this has been such a rad thing that you guys have organized, and it's just been like so. Like, I'm so happy that you gave me the opportunity to come hang out and to talk about our stuff. And it's like an honor to be part of this weekend long hangout with just with such like an awesome group. I think like I think it's so amazing that Mumalak was able to join Aiden from the Canada Files, Nora, James Wilt, Alberta Advantage, Waffle to the Left, everybody else. It's just been such a cool thing. So thank you guys for organizing these super dialectacular, spectacular. This has been super awesome. And thank you again for the opportunity to share about Harbinger Media Network.
That's
Thanks.
amazing. Thank you, sir. I think you're the first one to be able to say it's the full sentence. I'm not even going to try to say super dialect taxi. I can't do it. So
Oh, you
thank
almost
you.
got it.
I almost got it. I gave up. But no, thank you so much. That means all the world. Um, yeah, the podfather himself, André Goulet. Thank you for your time.
Matthew, thank you. Okay, man. Have a good one. I'll talk
Yeah,
to you later.
you too.